Welcome, 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 everyone, to another episode of Your Next 50. Ladies, we're here to tell you that it's your time to be intentional with your choices, to not waste one more day hiding behind those stories. You can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it. And this podcast is going to show you how. I am Sylvia.
And I am Jenny. Welcome, everybody. And in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to our very special guest. It is an honor and a pleasure to introduce our community to Dr. Gina Cody. Dr. Cody holds a master's and a doctorate degree in building engineering from Concordia University. She's going to tell you in a minute about her story and her experiences in the world, but it is important for you to know she was the very first woman awarded a PhD in building engineering, and she worked and was the owner for over 30 years of a professional practice in the private sector as a professional engineer. She holds many, many degrees and doctorates and etc., which I won't go into. But as a professional fundraiser and executive coach, working for sure in the not-for-profit world, you need to know that Dr. Gina Cody made a historic $15 million gift to Concordia University, celebrating, if I may, her journey and her story at Concordia. She's going to tell you more. And in honor of that, they renamed, I love this, the engineering school in her name and in honor of her contribution.
Which
Dr.
is the
Cody,
first time in Canada
ever.
and internationally, I believe, as well, that a woman has her name on a faculty and
Engineering.
in school. Yes.
Dr.
Mm.
Cody, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be the two wonderful musicians and podcasters who intrigue women's thinking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, and you intrigued us with your story because we were like, who is this woman? You know, we hear a lot of men, and I worked in fundraising. Jenny works in fundraising, has been, working in fundraising for years. And we often hear Mr. So and so, Mr. So and so. But when we hear Gina Cody has given $15 million to engineering, that lights shine for us. And we're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. And I actually just saying, who is this woman? I think we need more women
Here, here.
philanthropists. I
Yes.
honestly believe that. I think women have the ability and a strength and the know-how of being more philanthropic. So I think it's a good overture to your talk. Thank you.
Mm.
How do you think women give differently? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And maybe have you spoken with your girlfriends or your colleagues about that?
Not really, because I try to intrigue women to be philanthropists because I think we need more women stand out because they have the ability. And we speak about different organizations, different statures, and not seeing many women at the top of the buildings and faculties. It gives you a notion of why and why not. And I think the time has arrived to change that. We are in the era that we have
Mm-hmm.
the ability.
Yeah.
Mm.
So bring us back. I'd love to start at the beginning. Tell us about you arriving in Montreal from Iran. Was it a smooth transition? I know there was a lot going in Iran at the time, and your brother was here studying engineering at Concordia. Situate us in that story, Dr. Cody.
Wow. I left during the revolution in Iran, and actually, I left during the midst of hostage crisis, and only elderly would realize that. But uh, I arrived. I came to New York. That was a little bit of a stop there because there was no direct flights from Iran to Montreal, and it was an Iran Air flight. So I was pulled aside. So I'm not going to go through all of that.
Yes,
Mm.
sure.
But I arrived, and my luggage didn't. And by the time I got out, there was nobody in the airport.
Oh
The
no.
flight after mine was canceled, so I was the last flight out of Iran with Iran Air to Canada. So my story is just gets more and more um, exciting, to say the least. But just a quick anecdote that I have never shared in any of my talks before. When I arrived in Montreal, my brother was supposed to pick me up at the airport, and he wasn't there
Oh
because
no.
he heard in the news that the flights were canceled.
Mhm.
So he thought that was mine. So I'm looking everywhere, there's nobody. Mirabel Airport at the time,
Mhm.
that large airport, everybody was gone
Huge.
home because my luggage was lost. So I'm this young woman in a new country and completely lost. And I have a traveler check with me. I didn't have money, cash, but a friend of mine who had given me a wallet with a dime in it as a gesture of good fortune. I had the dime, an American dime, which I used in the phone system to call my
Yeah.
brother. I
Yeah.
said, "Where are you?" And he says, "Take a taxi." Oh my God. So, anyway, that was my first arrival in Montreal, Canada. And I took a taxi and I said, "You better stand at the door because I don't have cash to pay this guy." So,
We
I got
take it
home.
for granted, the cell phones and the apps nowadays, don't
Oh,
we? I mean, gosh, I
absolutely.
can just see it. You as a teenager, standing on at Mirabel. Mirabel's huge, and if it's empty, there could be panic and loneliness. Good for you.
Yes.
You
And
made
that's
it.
amazing that I was so calm. I look back and I
Yes.
said, "Oh my God." When you're young, you are very daring.
Yes.
The
Risk
older
taker.
you become, the worse you become. And that's why we nag our children all the time.
That's so
It's
true.
true. It's so true.
So your brother takes you in. I would imagine you still had. Did you have family back home at the
Oh,
time?
yes, my entire family. I just had one brother out of Iran, and
Yes.
that was
Mm.
him,
Yeah.
which I stayed with for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks till I got my own a place to stay. And so the next day, so here it is, this woman arriving in Montreal, a young woman, and I had only $2,000 in my pocket. The tuition was exceeding that. I said, I don't know what I was thinking.
Mm.
So anyway, he said to me, "Oh my gosh, I have spoken with this professor, and um, wants to meet you before you register because I wasn't supposed to go to Concordia."
Mhm.
So, and I had my acceptance to the other university for masters. So we went in to meet this professor named Cedric Marsh, and he interviewed me and says, "Oh my God, you're going to come to here. Why would you go anywhere else? I'm going to give you scholarship. You're good, and
Mhm.
your marks are
Wow.
good." So he took me
Fantastic.
to the registrar's office, issued me an acceptance. This is over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Don't take this wrong. It doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't happen like that anymore. No, if you are listening to this,
Yes,
don't
yes.
don't don't go to
Don't
Concordia
expect.
thinking that's going to happen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then he said, "Oh, you need to have a work permit." So they issued a work permit for me, and
Yeah.
a work permit. They gave me a letter, and they said you have to go to Citizenship Canada immigration office to get
Mm.
your work permit issued. I came out and I told my brother, "Can you take me to this place that I can get my work permit?" He said, "Oh my God, you just arrived yesterday.
Yeah.
What the heck is this?" So anyway, we took the taxi. We came back, and that afternoon I started working at the university.
But Dr. Cody, what did they see? What did Dr.
Hmm.
Cedric see? Like why did this happen? What was
I
it?
can't explain that, and I wish I would have ever asked him that. He's passed away. At the time, we all take things for granted. I said, "Okay, I was lucky, and I'm here. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to." And I was working so hard. I just
Mm,
wanted to prove to him that he wasn't wrong.
yeah.
So I would just stay up to one. And he had a lot of projects aside from my uh, research at the university that he was doing for industry and so on. So he wanted to finish them. He had deadlines, and he had me stay late, and I would do all the tests and analyze the results and give it to him. And for me, it was fantastic because I was being paid for all the
Mhm.
hours I'm working, plus my scholarship for uh, being enrolled at the university. So it it transformed my life,
Yes.
and I did not think about it at the time. It took a while for me to realize how important that
Mm.
moment of arrival was.
Okay.
So, which gets me back to my giving back. I felt, wow, can I do this for others? And if I can, how wonderful that would be.
Mhm.
Mm.
So that came my donation to university for
Mhm.
transformational uh, steps for not only newcomers, for anyone who is good, who is smart, and wants to succeed.
Mhm.
Mm.
To me, the merits are the ones that counts, especially
Mhm.
as women. And I always say, we women, we don't need the special treatment. We want level playing field. That's all we
Mm.
care.
Mhm.
And that's why even for my donation, it's not specified, but
Right.
I want women to apply. It
Yes.
goes without saying. I
Yeah.
want more women in engineering and computer science. I think being in the fourth industrial revolution, an era that relies on technology, an era that is transforming the way we work, we live, we play, all of that is being transformed by computer science and engineering.
Mm.
And if women are not in this space,
Space.
they will be left further
Mhm.
behind.
Mhm.
So we worked so hard to get to where we are now. And now we are in fourth industrial revolution. We need
Mhm.
to get them into STEM because
Yeah.
if we don't, we are going to be back into where we started.
Yep.
And this is really crucial for our society, for our country, and for our world to have more women in STEM programs.
Here,
And
here.
yes,
So it's 100% agree. I'm imagining this woman growing up. This is you, getting her PhD in I think it was earthquake research was what you studied.
right on.
Yeah, and then you go to I think the company. I'm not sure if you founded it or you took it over in Toronto, running an engineering company as a woman.
Predominantly with men.
Men,
Absolutely.
tell me about what it was like, maybe some anecdotes or what it was like to lead
Mm.
as a woman with a skirt, wearing a skirt. Were you given the respect you deserve? How did you hold your space there?
Something that was very uh, dominant throughout my career, being in construction, especially being in engineering, was being the only woman in the room. That was happening all the time. Now, to go back in time, when my father had a all boys high school,
Mhm.
and when I was young, and even before that, when I was in high school, he always felt that as a woman, you have to be a survival. So survival mode was always uh, kind of became part of my DNA. And being in Iran, a country that really may not respect the women they should at the time and even now. So it was very important to uh, hold yourself up and have the confidence you need to stand in a man's world. So that was my father who was really
Mm.
constantly pushing me. The minute I could swim, he'd say, "You have to learn how to swim. You're 4 years old, you need to swim because you have to survive if you are in a river." It was a bicycle. The minute my feet could reach a bike, he said, "You have to be able to ride this bike. You
Mhm.
have to be able to horseback ride, you know, because you could be in a place that there's only horses. I don't know where he thought I would be, but
I do not know how to horseback ride, I must say.
yeah, and the minute I had the age, I had to drive. So all of these was
Mm.
as part of my bringing up. And on the other side, my mom married young, never finished high school, but she always used to tell me and my sister, who became a dentist, that as a woman, you need to be independent. And to be independent, you have to get education. That's the only passage for a woman towards her independence. So that was on my mother's side. So you combine these two forces, I think I was very comfortable. My dad had me compete in public speaking. And actually, I won an award in Iran. I became number one, and I was given a trip to the Caspian to participate in the winners. But that gave me the ability to be able to stand in front of the audience and speak up without a fear of
Mm.
public speaking. And he had me in summer teach the boys who were 14 to 16. They were almost my age when I was teaching them. And he would sit in the back of the room to watch me teach mathematics to these guys. And he used to say that if you can handle the boys this age, you can handle anyone. And that is
Wow.
truly right. So all of that, I think, gave me the power to become who I became. And that's why I feel it's so important to parents to motivate and encourage their
Mm.
children, especially their daughters, to
Mhm.
Well, your
stand
parents
up.
sound like your number one champions. They really do.
Absolutely.
And I think having brothers too. That might, your family dynamic and all. You have three brothers who are, do you not, who are all
Yes,
engineers.
yes, yes. And I had to stand up to them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of the five, and I had to be telling them off when it needed to be. So,
I,
so to stand your ground in the household, you need to be a good, be able to argue with them.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
The word survival is a big word. It's like the gesture behind it. You need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. I have to ask the question because a lot of women say, this confidence and their self doubt. Were there times of self doubt, and how did you manage it? I love talking to
Mm.
women about self doubt and how to address it. Any advice or thoughts in your experiences?
I usually speak about fear. I think it's the fear. It's not self doubt. I had fear all my life
Hmm.
from childhood. Fear of not getting a good mark, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of uh, doing the wrong thing, making the wrong decision. This fear is always there, still is there. Obviously, it kind of reduces its level of importance, but when you have your own business, you are always fearful. So, what I thought that fear does, it makes you double check everything, makes you to be always second guessing your ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and makes you not to make many mistakes because you are always double checking. So, what I say, to overcome your fear, you need courage. And courage is not having a fear, it's having the fear, but being able to tackle it and overcome it. And I think I always use that courage. And how do you get the courage? It's your goals. What are
Mm.
your goals? That goal gives you the courage
Mm.
because you want to get there. So you push your fear aside and you want to do something, or the goals doesn't have to be big or small. It's just any goal. has its own place and gives you the ability to overcome obstacles and fear.
And was one of your goals, Dr. Cody, to become a major philanthropist?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Yeah. No, I.
Because when you're young, you start with mode of survival. You want to be able to pay your tuition. That's your
Yeah.
starting point.
Incremental goals as we grow up.
Absolutely. I always say step by step. There's nothing wrong with having huge goals, but the fear of having huge goals at time is that sometimes people let opportunities go by because I want that job, not this secondary job. And they forget that this secondary job will give them the platform to get to that job. So, taking one step at a time is extremely important for the success of any individual, male or female, or anyone.
I can't help but bring this conversation back to your girls. I know you have two girls. At least one or both are in engineering. Is that correct?
No, one is a lawyer
One is a lawyer.
and practicing law, and the other one did her PhD in engineering. Yes, my
As
older
well.
one.
Okay.
And I'm very
So
proud
as
of both of them, I guess I should
I
say.
bet.
Because if I don't, they say, Mom, you never talk about us.
Ah.
Well, I think one of the things that we love to do on Your Next 50 is to embrace the whole person. And in our cases, both of us are moms. It's part of our story.
Mhm.
What would it have been like in your house when your girls were teenagers in high school, studying? What advice did you give them, or what was the expectation in the Cody household?
I think the expectations, and sometimes I feel maybe it's not direct. As parents, we instill issues in our children indirectly. And when they ask you, say, No, I never said that. No, I never did that. But you indirectly, constantly do that. And they knew being a good student matters. They knew that being a leader in what they did as a young woman and a girl matters. So I think that was always there. So, we paid attention to their marks, not that marks matter as much, but to their well being and being constantly cognizant of them. In summer taking camps that really intrigues them and makes them a better person, better human, better speaker. So all of that, and being conscientious of how they're performing. I think as a parent, you need to be engaged. My parents were very engaged in my education, and I remember, like, if I had to stay up at night, my mom would sit up with me so I don't fall asleep. Like, I look back and I say, what a wonderful mom I had. Oh my God, I didn't do that for my children because she went way beyond. She would sit down and she said, I don't want you to fall asleep. So I'm reading newspaper. So because I know how important this exam is for you. Because I was such a perfectionist. And that really, I think, hurt me as a person. And I don't want my children to be perfectionists. I think my daughters are a little bit, and I wish they weren't. It's not a comfortable life to be perfectionist because you're constantly working harder and harder, and our marks used to be from 20, and if I would get 19.75, I will be sad. Oh my God, that's horrible.
Well, it goes back to the fear that you talked about, right? Because we're afraid of showing up and looking stupid or being judged, then we double check, triple check, our work. And then our work is very, very good. But like you said, then it goes on to the other side, too much on the other side. And I believe that
Yes.
can be, yes, like you said, uncomfortable and harmful, right?
But
Unhealthy.
anytime I had meetings, during my career, being as a woman that you ask in a male dominated work platform and having a staff that are mainly male, uh, I had to make sure that I was always right. Because if I give a wrong advice,
Yeah.
I didn't need anybody to tell me you did wrong. I uh, would be so hard on myself. Gina, how could you do that? How dare you say something like that? That I wouldn't repeat it again. So I always say you can make mistakes, but don't make it twice or three
Mhm.
times. Just learn from your mistakes and don't repeat it.
The level of scrutiny you're describing, it just, and to be those trailblazers, I think us in our, I've had a big milestone birthday this year at 50. The kind of and I have to say, when I was 25, I don't think I appreciated it the same way I do now, the respect for the women that came before us, and respect for the kind of scrutiny they were under. I'd love to hear more about the perfectionism thing, about how it softened over the years. Did it soften, and how did you soften it? Is it just based on experience? You just got gentler with yourself?
I think it's the experience, and you say, okay, I've been doing this so many times. I know what I'm talking about. I don't have to second guess myself. And also, when you are younger, you want to be um, sort of put on a scale. When you're at university, your marks matter because that's the level they determine your abilities. So it's very important when it is in black and white in front of you. Uh, but as you get into the profession, there is no marking. So that becomes easier. And I think marking probably is one of the worst things we do to our students. We should have them, you know, it should be either, you know, fail fail with good credentials. There should be some levels, but this 78 makes it to B plus, and 80 makes it to A. Like these marking levels, to me, is a little bit ambiguous, and I'm not sure it gives a great a standard of determination for a person's ability. So yes, it gets softer because you have more confidence in yourself.
Yeah. One thing I always like to say to people is, you can't expect yourself to be perfect at something you've never done before. Give yourself the grace of practice and using that muscle to get better, and to have compassion for those first times out the gate. I mean, you should, if you went back and listened to our beginning podcast, they're very different than we're in episode, I don't know where we are, 80, 90, something like that. So it's great to hear that advice.
Yes, and that you would know this better than anyone as a musician. The first time you play a song, it doesn't sound
It's a
good.
mess.
And then as you do it more, it gets much better and better and better. So I think
Can I
for it,
switch gears? There's a question. In 1989, Dr. Cody, I was in Vancouver, a young student, and over the news waves, we heard about the Polytechnique massacre shootings here, where 14 women in the engineering program were murdered. I'm really switching gears.
yes.
You are just finishing your PhD as the first woman finishing a PhD in engineering. What is going through your mind? How did this get into your body? How did this manifest? What was your role, and not role, but what was going on for you at this time?
Anytime I get asked that question, I get goosebumps. And it's not an easy thing to answer. I'm sorry.
Mm.
For women in general. And I always say that moment left a very, very deep scar in me. And I think gave me this strength. And having a school named after me, I think makes that moment of desperation a moment of uh, not success, a moment of relief that we belong to engineering. We are here to stay and we are not going away. And something that gives me a lot of strength in my next 50
Yes.
is that when I talk to women, the young girls at the school at Concordia, and they all say, "Oh my God, the moment of that renaming, I realized that yes, I belong here.
Yeah.
Yes, engineering is as my domain as is my male um, friends and classmates." So uh, that moment, I always think it's good to make negatives to positive. And all my life, I anything that is negative, I say, okay, this is a challenge now, and how do I make it into a positive? It may be a cliche, but trust me, I have used it to my advantage all the time. When I used to go to meetings, for example, that here is I'm the only woman in the room. Firstly, they all remembered my name because I was the only one. They don't
It's
remember the
such a
other, 100 people. They only think I had the responsibility to be right, say the wrong, don't say the wrong thing, say always the right thing, and be there as a good person, perform well. So when, as the only woman in the room, you're performing well, now everybody says, okay, what was her name? They all remember it. So a negative turns into a
yes.
positive, and they want you on their side because you're doing the right thing and saying the right thing.
Yeah. So go
My
ahead, Jean.
interpretation is mindset matters, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the way you think about something, the way you could choose to be defeatist, or you could choose to feel isolated or ostracized, but you chose to use it as an advantage, right?
Yeah, to
And
become your
it is,
strength.
honestly, it is to every challenge. And if you look at our successes, a lot of them comes through the challenges in our life, the worst moments that you're down and you think you can get up.
Yeah,
You get up stronger. You are a
Mm,
new person.
yeah.
It gave you so much strength that next time something similar happens, been there, done that,
easy
a
peasy.
piece of cake. Yeah.
One quote that a friend of mine that I always remember is, it's always darkest before the dawn. That idea, and I know on the Underdog Leadership podcast, we talk a lot about overcoming. That moment when you get through something and you choose how it will define you, or choose how you will
Mm,
leverage that story going forward. I find that a fascinating. All of the leaders that I've interviewed, and Sylvia, we've had some on our podcast, I've always spoken of the learning moment in it, not the setback part. And you have done it so eloquently here, taking opportunities as they come and leveraging them. That's what I'm taking away so far from our conversation. Yeah,
Absolutely.
mm.
yeah. So go ahead, Sylvia.
No, I was gonna jump into the. You spoke about your parents as role models. When you are a trailblazer, and there might not be many women engineers and women philanthropists, you are that role model. And you talked about Dr. Cedric. Were there any other female role models in
Hmm.
your life that you looked up to, perhaps in the business world, or who did you say, "Wow, that's I'm going to take something from her"?
Wow, good question. Unfortunately, probably weren't in my domain as such. You know, you have many successful women, Nobel Prize winners, Mercury, and so on.
Mm.
There are a ton of them, and I wouldn't compare myself because I was too small to compare myself with them. But to be honest, I always, in my career, I was always trying just to be good. And someone asked me who were your mentors, and I said my mentors were everyone.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
The ones who did wrong to me, they were my probably better mentors, because I learned so well not to be them,
Yeah.
not to repeat what
Yeah.
they did. So they taught me a lot. And there were the people who corrected me, and constantly, and through your career you have constant people who are good mentors, especially in engineering. You need mentors, and there are numerous of them. And I didn't have many women ahead of me in my profession to teach me things that I didn't know. They were all men, and they were willingly giving me the passage. They were always there if I had to ask questions. And one of the most important thing in engineering specifically is that you have to be, you can't make mistake. You cannot, like, you're allowed to, be wrong at times, but you have to double check, because you're designing things and you want to,
Yeah.
there are engineers that are more senior, you go and ask constantly. And I always encourage my staff. I say, always ask, even if you know it, ask again. So these are your mentors throughout your career. And in engineering, we require having mentorship. If you don't have an engineer mentoring you, you can't become a professional engineer. They have to sign up that, yes, they have taught you, yes, you have taken instructions from them. And throughout my career, I had many engineers kind of working with me through their careers, and I signed for their application when they applied for their professional designation. So it's a pattern that exists. We probably take it for granted. It becomes part of our DNA and part of our life, that we constantly have these role models without specifically saying that so and so was my role
Right.
model. Every one of them are role model, and we have way more role models than we ever gave them a credit, and ourselves the notion of having them as our role models. But I have had thousands, honestly, my clients, the words they would tell me every time I would sit down and talk with them, and they would say, "Oh, Gina, I don't like it to do it this way because of these reasons." Oh my God, I just learned something.
Hmm.
And and I still do. Just speaking with you two outstanding ladies today, I'm learning from you as we go along. And I think that's the excitement and the joy that life brings to us, that joy of learning constantly, constantly, and making yourself a better person constantly.
Mm.
And I always say, oh my God, we have so much biases, we have so many bad things in ourselves that we have to constantly fight it. How you come over them, just be conscious of them and just remind yourself, wow, the thing I just said wasn't right.
Yeah.
The way I looked at that person was not appropriate. And when you know that, you will be a better person, maybe by a small, small amount, but you will make yourself a better person.
Well, wow. I mean, as a learner, as a core value, that really speaks to me. And the idea that every day Dr. Gina Cody, and with all of her stories and all of her successes, is continuing to learn and grow and put herself open to experiences like this one, that just really, really inspires me. So thank you,
It's
Dr.
very
Cody.
inspiring. That's our whole podcast is about learning. It started out that we had wonderful conversations together and we wanted to share them because we're learning all the time and wanting to be better, and inviting other people on that journey with us.
We one of the themes was money, women and money, to Dr. Cody, that we needed to have more open, fulsome conversations about money and accumulating wealth, not in like a wealth like a status thing, but wealth as in assets to create, like you talked about, survival and safety, and hopefully, you know, philanthropy is certainly a core value of mine. Have you ever how do you coach or advise your children around money or around taking care of themselves? Have you thought much about that? Or
Yes, I think money is a means to live. So if you don't think about it, you're not having the means. For me, money is to have a good life, but I cannot understand, and maybe this is a wrong way to say it, but when people waste money,
mm,
to me is not a good thing, because
Mm.
I say, and I tell that to my children all the time, this money that is being wasted can feed someone, can make someone have a better night's sleep, can do better things. You can fly on a regular plane,
mhm,
but you cannot fight climate change and take a private jet everywhere and waste both money, resources, and climate just because you can afford it.
Mhm.
How can you make that money work for the society as a
mm,
whole than
mm,
for you as an individual?
Mm.
So for me, money is, you know, I enjoy life, but I don't like my children to waste money. I want them to be cognizant of who they are. You know, they live in a good house, they have had a great life. Obviously, they are in a wealthy category, but they have to be conscious that it's not for them to put them be different than others. They are equal to everyone else, and how they should utilize that opportunity to make the world a better place
Mm.
and the life of those around them or not around them even a better contributor. So
mhm,
that's what I see money as. After
mm,
you have adequate money for your life to have a good life, the rest of it is how you can change the life of others, how you can expand that good life to bring
Mm.
others into the tent.
That's beautiful.
what a
It
great conversation.
is so wonderful. Mm. Thank you
Mm,
for sharing with us, Dr. Cody.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I love speaking with ladies
Mm.
who care. And anyone who cares, but you guys do care. I don't think you would have this podcast if you were
No.
not in that horizon. And just knowing people that want to make life for women. And when you make it for women, I think you're making it for the world a better
Yeah.
place, because we are the mothers, we are the daughters, uh,
mhm,
we are the people who bring up the next generation. So we better
Exactly.
stand up and take care of that generation, because
Mm.
we have a lot of power
Mm.
and a lot of strength. So we need to pass it on.
Yes. We have a question at the end of the show that we ask our guests. And what's in store for you, Dr. Cody, in these next 50
50
years?
years.
Hmm. Every day I say, okay, what am I going to do next? I, I have started the journey the minute I sold my company and retired. I'm very active in the corporate world as director of the board, chair of the board, and constantly speaking at different engagements. So I just want to give the strength to women in my small capacity, to be out there, to speak up, because really, as I said it at the beginning of our podcast,
Mhm.
the fourth industrial revolution scares me. Not it scares me in a bad way. It scares me in a good way because I think we will have the ability to do things in a better way. But with the same token, we have the obligation to ensure we do it in a good way. And we need women to
Mhm.
enter into this forum because I'm afraid they will be left behind. So I want to encourage more women in STEM. And when we reach the level that is adequate, and I think we have a long way to go. So hopefully I can see it before I depart from this world. But I think there's a lot of work to be done.
We'll get to it, Dr. Cody. We need you.
Thank you.
Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure. I've had more than one goosebump moment. There is a feeling, if you're listening to this podcast, I hope you can feel the warmth and the enthusiasm emanating from our guest. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. This is definitely the kind of podcast that you might want to share with a friend. There's a button to share, to send some inspiration. I have to say, as a musician, Dr. Cody might be an engineer, but she speaks for all women when she speaks, and it's been a real pleasure to learn from her. And thanks everyone for listening.
So
Sylvia?
inspiring. So
Thanks for having
inspiring. Thank you so much. We drop a new episode on Wednesdays, and thank you so much for your listening, your subscribing, and for sharing with your friends. And yes, and if you like this, please give us a 5-star review, because the more stars we have, the more listeners we have. That's just the way it goes.
People we reach. Yeah.
We will catch you next time. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Dr. Cody. Catch you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.